Welcome to the JB Media Institute Digital Drop-In. This is Sarah, your lead instructor, and I'm really excited today to be having a conversation called the SEO Reality Check with Leah and David.
Hello.
Hello.
So just a few housekeeping details in case you're new to our webinar. You have the ability to chat in your questions as well as to add them to the Q&A. The system will alert me anytime any of you place something into those areas. So you can just type it in and then I'll see it and we'll go ahead and address any questions. So feel free to drop any questions in during this conversation over the next 45 to 50 minutes. And also everyone who signed up, you will get a copy of this webinar and you will also get a copy of the slides. So don't feel like you have to write everything down or remember all of it. You'll get a copy of this stuff and you can go over it on your own as well. But like I said, I'm really excited today to have two guests that are from JB Media Group, which is Justin's marketing agency here in Asheville, Leah Shapiro and David Gwaltney. And I want to take a couple minutes and just let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their background. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I have a prepared statement. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Shapiro. As Sarah said, I work at JB Media Group as the SEO and content strategist. My background is in writing. I worked in magazine publishing for about 5 years, have a degree in English. I worked at the Laurel of Asheville magazine as editor-in-chief. I wrote about 30 articles per month, had a lot of freelancers, and really worked in print, and then decided it was time to go digital. So I got a job here at JB Media, starting out in kind of PR and content development, but I asked the SEO team way too many questions all the time that we all decided I should really belong in SEO as well as in content development. So that's where I have been the last couple of years, really honing in on my own professional development and doing the technical SEO as well as where content and SEO meet.
Awesome.
Great.
And David?
Hey, I'm David, and I am the Internet Advertising and SEO Specialist. I really my background is more in the arts. I went to film school, and I'm also a musician, so I was playing music, and I was learning to promote myself through Google Ads and Facebook, and that ultimately led me to this job, thanks to Sarah Benoit, a connection through improv comedy, actually. And from there, it's just been kind of the course of the job where it's led me to ultimately be an SEO, which has really been a blessing in disguise because there really is creativity to it, and yeah, it's been really interesting for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much, because I think what I'm most excited about and what I try to share with students pretty commonly is that although I feel SEO has a lot to it, it's a very complex kind of world at this point, and it can be technical. Just so all of you can be aware, none of us have computer programming backgrounds. None of us are computer science people. None of us went to college for some sort of high-end technical thing. So I really believe that at this point in the game, after doing SEO for 17 years, that it's actually really accessible to people. And it's something that even if you don't want to learn it and do it, even if you're a business owner, you can still understand how it functions, and it can help you optimize all levels of what you're doing online. So that's a huge part of the conversation I want to have today, simply because I think our sort of beliefs about SEO from 10 years ago or 15 years ago, a lot of people never moved past them. And they're sort of stuck in this antiquated perspective of what search engine optimization is. So I'm really excited to talk about that, and I hope all of you can realize that it's about being creative and I think caring about people that actually bring the skills into this type of work where you can do really well. So I'm excited about that. So the first question I just want to ask both of you, because I know this is sort of a departure from where you started career-wise. What do you love most about working in this job?
Sure.
Doing this type of work.
Yeah.
Is there one thing that gets you excited or one thing that's really interesting? I will admit for me, when I started out, because I also started as a writer, that I was just a total keyword research dork. That made me so excited to think about how people ask questions, what they're looking for online. Like that was sort of my first job when I started doing SEO, was keyword research. And I still to this day actually really enjoy doing it, although it's cumbersome and really involved. But it's something that got me really excited from the beginning about learning more. So what was that for both of you?
Yeah, I do like keyword research as well. That's what I do a lot of that as well. But I think what I really like is just, one, the creativity, but also, and I think this is going to be a theme, just that there are no like hard facts of SEO. There's some best practices, but those are always changing. So being with something that's always changing and evolving is more exciting than getting stuck in something that is always going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that.
Absolutely.
What I like most about SEO is that it really deals with the user and how to make your website have a purpose, how to make it do what you set out to have it do. It's all about making a better experience on the web, and I know all of us have been to bad websites that don't work and that frustrate us, and SEO is about making it better and making it more relevant to whoever ends up being on it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that's my hashtag make the internet a better place. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's my whole sort of soapbox sometimes is around that, because I feel like we have to keep looking at a constant level of improvement, right? So I think SEO is the part of the work that always inspires me to know that we could be doing better. There could be something new that we haven't looked at yet. That's why I always talk about how we're mining for opportunities, and the opportunities are sort of endless. None of us can do all the SEO like in month one and then be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Doesn't really work like that. So the first question that I wanted to ask is, what is the biggest misunderstanding that you think clients and businesses in general have about SEO? Or maybe sort of a similar question would be, what's the biggest myth that you want to debunk? So like I said, I think a lot of people that heard about SEO 10 or 15 years ago, or even like 5 or 6 years ago, they have some things in their head, and I have to sort of, as a teacher, sometimes be like, okay, all that stuff you learned in 2008, I need you to just like delete that from your brain, and we're gonna start over with a whole kind of understanding of what's going on in the industry. But there's lots of different places where that comes up, and since you all work with different businesses and clients, what do you think it is that, they kind of need to clear out of their old thinking and kind of come in with a fresh perspective, especially as we go into the next year?
What I find is that a lot of clients have a head term or like a keyword phrase that they're like, I want to be number one for this phrase. And there's not research behind it. It's just like a gut feeling that they have. We shouldn't really be making gut feeling decisions anymore. There's so much data out there that should really be driving our marketing decisions. And so one of the biggest things we do is the keyword research, but it's also talking to clients about why do you think that term is your term, and then that really uncovers what they think the purpose of their service or organization is. So it's not so much about ranking number one for a key term as it is about really understanding why you're existing on the internet and going from there.
Yeah, awesome.
That's great. For me, I think a large kind of caveat I have to tell clients is SEO is not an immediate thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It is a long game. It will take at least 30 to 90 days to see results change, if not a year. And especially if you have a website where you have no authority, those changes are going to take even longer. So it's very much a long game.
Yeah, I think those are both really important kind of things that everybody sort of understand, is that one, there's no immediate gratification, right, in this world. I feel like when you need immediate gratification, that's when it's like, okay, let's get an ad budget. Mm-hmm. Let's work on advertising, because it's still going to take some planning, but it's going to have a more immediate effect. Whereas SEO is really about building authority, and we don't build authority right away. There's just no way to make that happen, especially if we're competing against competitors that have already spent 5 years or 10 years or longer building their authority. Now we have to really understand kind of, again, where are those opportunities that we have. And Leah, I really like what you said, just because I think one of the things I repeat when I'm talking to people all the time is that number one is arbitrary. So when I started in SEO, you could say, I want to be number one. But literally for the better part of a decade, what does that even mean? Number one is not the same everywhere. It's not even always the same in different parts of the same city. So I can be on North Asheville versus South Asheville and be getting different results.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of geo-targeting and the advent of smartphones, geolocating everybody where they're at, and just the intelligence of the algorithm and how it kept up with that trend, I think is really change the way we use metrics, where when I started, being number 1 or number 4 or number 6 kind of had like a more tangible, concrete meaning. And now I think we have to look at a number of metrics to get to the point where we can say like, yes, this is working, instead of having that one singular kind of, well, I just want to get at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you all, but there's some phrases where getting to the top is not possible anymore.
Oh, totally.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so working in tourism for me, a lot of times I've learned that, you know, sites like TripAdvisor and hotels.com and, you know, even Google itself running all the different things they do for travel, like flights and hotels. There's no way smaller websites can even get in there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And we've been working a lot with medical websites, and that's a very similar thing where medical terms are extremely difficult, and you're up against WebMD and a lot of these huge websites that have incredible authority, and there's no chance.
And
Yeah.
it's okay. It's like you don't have to rank for that medical term. You just need people to find you when they're like, I have a saw stuck in my head. I need help, you know? So it's okay that you don't rank for lesion or whatever.
Yeah.
Another right medical term for that. But
But yeah, I think that just brings us back to the importance of keyword research, right? So understanding kind of not just what are people searching for, but then also looking at the competition and understanding, you know, some of those broader terms, some of them even being 2 or 3 word phrases are just done. There's already bigger websites that are dominating. So we have to use that research to dig deeper into the topical areas. So one of the things that I see, especially when I'm teaching, is I'm always kind of looking at, all right, what are sort of higher level things that I think are more difficult to do for people in search engine optimization? And what are some of the low hanging fruit that almost all of us can be doing, to your point, Leah, to just make websites better? So what is like sort of the most common missed opportunity when you guys get clients that come to you where they're just sort of not doing something that really all of us should be working on at this point, just because it's kind of, in a general sense, should be common knowledge, I would say. Because I think a lot of businesses and organizations, especially if they're smaller, they want some things that they can take action on. And if they just jump into, let's say, Moz.com or Ahrefs, they're gonna get this huge list of things that they should be doing without really being clear on like what can they actually accomplish without maybe huge amounts of manpower. So what are the things that you guys are suggesting to people kind of right out the gate, because you know it's low hanging fruit?
Well, I think to build authority in general, you have to have backlinks. That's where that comes from. So if you can do any kind of outreach, I think that would be great, which is not something that we really do here, but that is something that I think is incredibly important. So if you have kind of affiliates or people that are a part of your web, asking them to do some kind of link trade might be really helpful, and that will instantly add authority to your website.
Yeah.
yeah, and backlinking is kind of like PR. It can be very long and thankless. So looking into different ways of doing that is a great idea. The other 2 things that I would add is making sure that once people get to your site that there is an action for them to take, that there is some kind of conversion set up, some kind of goal set up, because Google does, you know, they have over 250 things that they look at in their algorithm for ranking, and if people are just going to your site and bouncing off and it's not helping you or your organization or business if they're not doing anything on the site. So really being thoughtful about your conversions and what's set up. And then the second thing is, if you're a brick and mortar, paying attention to local SEO is huge, and there's some really great local SEO experts that can help with that. But even as simple as owning your Google My Business thing that comes up when you type in your business is like hugely important. Making sure your address is up to date, your name and your phone number and all of that. Those are kind of small things that you can do.
Yeah, that's excellent, because I think those are all things, like I said, that most businesses really need to kind of have, not because it's an SEO strategy, but because it's really actually just going to get you more exposure in a general sense. Has SEO value, but actually is going to get you more exposure overall. The one thing I wanted to mention too that you brought up, David, is link building, because when I started in SEO, link building was like a service. But I could also just do things like article syndication, right? Take an article, write 17 versions of it, and just like publish it to all these crappy websites. I could also do like press release syndication. So I could write a press release and put it on all these press release websites. I could go to certain companies and be like, I'll pay you to companies basically in other countries most of the time say, I'll pay you $200 and over the next 6 months you'll get me 10,000 links back to my website. Most of the times those links were on what we call link farms, which is giant websites where all they did was just put thousands and thousands of links across them. And you were kind of paying for those links, and at the time the algorithm didn't really have a way to differentiate, right? It didn't have the quality understanding that it has now. So all of that stuff pretty much is banned now. And over the course, I would say around 2012 was really when Google started saying, no more. This is all junk. It doesn't actually prove that your website is good. And so they took away a lot of those things. And so we really had to go back to this very manual, kind of old school approach to link building, which means doing PR, doing partnership outreach, maybe working with different influencers that have great blogs or websites, making sure you do Google My Business, but also all your other local citations if you have a brick and mortar location. So that's just something I think is really important for businesses to understand. When you hire people to do SEO, a lot of times what they can really help with is the content marketing. They can help with working on your website. They can help with these sort of structural things and these promotional content marketing items. But I think the link building is where we struggle the most, because to hire a company to do it, or even a freelancer, it's gonna take them a lot of hours. So you have to have a pretty big budget that you're willing to spend. I think in the same way that you would spend it on a public relations company. And if you don't have that budget, then you have to figure out, again, how your in-house team can start to look for those opportunities, or even just understanding that every time you get coverage anywhere on the web, whether it's media or your friend's blog or some networking person that you met, their website wants to reference you, that you always ask them for the link, because that link has so much value. And a lot of the websites that rank at the top, some of them aren't even that great of websites. Totally. But the links are in some way proving that the website is worthwhile. And then if people get to that website, even if it's not perfect, but they stay, to Leah's point, that means that they want to be there. And so that's the behavior of people actually sometimes dictates where you end up at the top, which I think is really fascinating. Yeah. So I've run into a couple case studies where companies had an older website that has been kind of old and out of date for a long time, but they have a huge loyal following. So everybody's used to coming to their old sort of not as great website and using it. And because they keep going there and buying and looking at 5 pages and staying for 4 minutes, Google keeps holding them at the top for some things, even though they probably should redesign and upgrade at this point. But it's like Google's really not just looking anymore at, let's say, keywords or just how many links you have, but this whole other variation of data that's specifically around behavior. So one of the things that I think all of us agree on is basically that SEO is changing all of the time. And so we've got a couple questions I want to talk about here. And again, anyone who'd like to submit questions, please do that today. We're going to go through our conversation, but I want to prioritize whatever it is that you all need to talk about. So the first question comes from Glenn, and that is, my biggest challenge with SEO writing is how it feels contrived and unnatural. It feels like the offering isn't the content, is substandard, and so I'm not so inclined to do it. So I think this is a great question because I will say, Glenn, just to be direct, I think contriving and writing unnatural content is actually an antiquated approach to SEO now, and that you actually shouldn't be doing that, right? That you actually should just understand the best practices, write great content, and look for keyword opportunities. So it's more like write the content and then see how the keywords can lay out in a way that is natural, rather than how we used to do it in the old days and how some people still talk about it, which is kind of leading with the keyword and being repetitive. I think actually Google would like us to move away from that in general, but what do you guys think about that?
I think Shaq was probably the perfect person to answer this.
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk about our process because I think that might inform or you might see some similarities with how you're doing things, but there's definitely a very important balance between the keywords and the content. So Google, first and foremost, loves good quality content. They will even rank pieces for top terms that the piece doesn't even mention, because Google's algorithm and AI is getting so good at understanding what your piece is about. So what I say is kind of start with maybe a general outline. There are some techniques to doing that with keywords in mind and looking at the search landscape in mind. And then from there, after you have, I always do an outline when I'm just writing anything. And then once you have kind of your big ideas, just write as if you're writing like a normal human for other normal humans. And then maybe go through and make sure that you're covering your bases. But Google's algorithm, Google is just getting so smart. We use this tool called ClearScope, which is about $50 a month, and you get like 25 reports or something like that. But it is taking AI and it is taking the relationship between content and SEO to a whole new level, and really helping you understand what the search landscape is out there, and making sure that you're still writing for real people. Yeah. It's really cool. AI is the hit of the 2020s. It's already happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say, to build off that, I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because as we know, back in the day, it was keyword stuffing, so it was just throw that keyword in any variation as many times as you can in there. But really, I think a good practice might be just writing it how you want to write it, and then after you're done, doing an SEO edit where you just, at that point, look for opportunities to insert the keyword, but not overstuffing. And that's where I think Yoast, it really is a powerful tool. Some people complain that it's about over-optimizations to get that green light, but honestly, just to have that awareness that you can write as a human being and then ultimately come back afterwards as a second lens and throw in the keywords in appropriate places. And it's great. And also, alt tags are a great place to, in a way, keyword stuff, but to get the keywords in there without it being necessarily visible to your written word.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the things that I work with students on is essentially the idea that once you've done this editing too, Glenn, that if you read it out loud and it sounds repetitive, to me it is. I really feel most of us can trust ourselves. Mm-hmm. That if we feel like we've overstuffed the keywords, and because I feel like reading it out loud, I hear myself say something too similar repeatedly, I can be like, ugh, this is a little too much, and then I know to dial it back. Mostly because I was trained, like David talked about. So when I started in 2003, the first person I studied with would give me a topic, and she would say, I need you to write a page, and I need you to use this keyword phrase 7 times, this keyword phrase 6 times, this keyword phrase 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then she'd be like, and basically they were all the same phrases, just slightly different. Mm-hmm. And so to your point, Glenn, that was terrible. And as a writer, was sort of painful on a regular basis because it would made the content really sort of not readable and not as what I thought was really quality. And so to Leah's point, I think we can trust that the algorithms now are so smart. Their definition of quality has dramatically changed. And the AI is learning every day what quality means based on all these factors that include behaviors and responses to the content. And so we don't have to work so hard to try to do that kind of formula anymore. What we really want to do is look at the headings, look at the alt tags, think about what we named the page or named the title of the blog or whatever it is that we're building. And just think about those opportunities, but still write content that's just really great. And then I see here, it seems like at some point Yoast became out of date, so I started using all-in-one SEO instead. So just as a WordPress person, I think all-in-one is just as useful as Yoast. Yoast has a lot more features that you can graduate up to that are more technical. So that's why I use Yoast personally, is it actually becomes a shortcut as you learn that tool to doing all sorts of technical things within your WordPress website that all-in-one is typically just never had as part of their full kit. But as far as things like metadata and the basics, I think all-in-one can work. All-in-one also, I will just say, because I've been building on WordPress since 2005, I use Yoast a lot more frequently because I feel like it has less security problems. So if you're using all-in-one, I'm just going to say update that thing. That plugin, I feel, has some problems when it gets out of date, and it can let a lot of hackers in. Yoast, I personally, in just my experience over like about 10 or 12 years, I found Yoast just doesn't have that same kind of stressor. So if it goes out of date for a few months, I'm not worried about the kind of security issues it's creating on my sites. And so that's why I went and used Yoast instead. But I think the Yoast website also has a really good training program in there as well. And I haven't looked at all-in-ones in a while, but for those of you who are choosing a plugin, you can look at their websites and kind of see what sort of support they have. And Carissa, just to throw in your question here, is there an option for Wix-based websites? Wix does not require plugins. So if you actually go to Google and type in, SEO tools for Wix or how to write my metadata in Wix, they actually just have it as part of their settings on the page. But they don't give you very much more than being able to add the title and description that shows in Google. They don't have too many other tools involved, and Wix doesn't really allow plugins, so that's a little bit different. This other question we have from Second Gear is, how much does it matter where these links are featured? Are homepage links worth more than a link hidden on some other page? And so I want to clarify that we're talking about the backlinks. So that's a great question. So backlinks, does it matter where they're featured? Does it matter what websites they're on? Do you guys want to talk about that for a quick minute?
Well, yeah, I'm actually thinking of the other way around, where they're just internal links. There's a lot of good stuff about information architecture, about how Google treats links even internally in your navigation, and how there's a whole science behind that, so I won't go into that, but that is a really great, if you're a nerd, that's a great place to dig deep, information architecture. Yeah. But in terms of backlinks, so if you have, by default, your homepage is going to get more backlinks than any other page. If you have a product page, if you have a service page, if you have a blog, your homepage is going to be the page that more outside websites are going to be linking to just by default, because if they mention your business name, they'll probably link to your homepage. But that said, a lot of folks build campaigns around individual pages that they want to have more backlinks for. And so if you have a service, like if you're a software as a service agency and you have a one product page that is all about one service that's your key service, then you'll have to be building a backlinking campaign for that page so it can start getting more authority. And you can also, the way you organize, like I said at the beginning, the way you organize your own site will share link equity, or link juice as it's known, between internal pages, and will direct Google into knowing kind of which pages are most important.
Yeah.
And also, so speaking to, is it Second Gear?
Yeah.
All right, I love you, Second Gear.
Yeah, shout out Second Gear.
So also the value of the website that the links are coming from. So they have authority. So let's say Tom who has a blog, he links to you. That's going to count for a little bit. But let's say Patagonia links to you. You're going to get a lot of authority because they're very authoritative. So thinking about even people that have a big reputation, those are the type of people that will give you even more authority.
Then there are these sneaky things called no-follow links, and that means that they don't want to share the link juice with you. And we want to, and there are some plugins where you can check, I have a plugin that tells me if the links on the page are no-follow or not no-follow, and so you want those follow links, those not no-follow links.
Yeah. So let me know if you have additional questions about that. Hopefully that was clear that, because I agree with all this. I think that one, Google ranks web pages, not websites. So every page of your website can be doing better on Google than other pages, and vice versa. They can be doing worse. So pages that are like your home page, or pages that are really popular, pages that have had more links over time, when you get a link from there, you're going to get more link juice potentially. Websites that are stronger, ranking better, have more traffic, people spend more time. Any website that's higher quality and higher performance is essentially going to be able to provide you with more link juice if they link to you. And again, some websites that are really, really powerful and doing well, sometimes when they link to you, they'll tell you it's a no-follow link because, to Leah's point, they're not willing to share their authority only in certain circumstances. So it does matter where you're getting the links. Not all links are created equal. And I see the second question, do email lists that include links help with this?
Do email lists that include links help with
so I think what you're talking about, second gear, is like email newsletters that go out with links in them to your website from someone else, or maybe even from your own newsletter. It gets sent out, it's got a link to your website, it's going to maybe a pretty decent list.
That's not like a backlink on a site though. That'll help with your site traffic because people hopefully will be going to that page.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good idea.
Yeah, I have no answer to that. That's a good question.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, it's funny because you just nailed what I would say about that, which is this is where we get into how some things on the internet are not causal, they're correlative.
Yes.
So, no, when you have an awesome mention in somebody's email newsletter that's going out to 200,000 people and it links back to your website, that is not considered a backlink and it doesn't cause you to gain more Google authority. However, what happens is when you get mentioned in a newsletter like that, and then let's say 80 people click on the newsletter link and go to your website, and then they stay on the page because the page is good, and they learn more about you. Maybe they even click to another page. Now what we've got is actually increased traffic that's staying on the site longer, looking at multiple pages, and that will correlate to typically some sort of improvement in your SEO authority, right? So it's sort of like not a direct relationship, but there's a relationship there. And that's a great question because the same thing exists for social media. So Google has held for years and years and years that having links from Facebook and Twitter and other things like that do in no way cause your SEO authority to increase or your rankings to increase. However, we often see that if you're doing really well on social media, you're driving a lot of great traffic back to your website and people love your website. Now that somehow correlates to your rankings and your authority going up over time. And so I hope that makes sense to everybody because it's a little bit, wonky of an explanation, but Google has stuck by this argument around correlation versus causation, and that when it comes to links that aren't on websites, there's more of a correlative relationship between them, not a direct line where we say the more email newsletters you're in, the higher your rankings go, or the more social media links you have, the higher your rankings go. That's like sort of a too simplified version of that. Awesome. So yeah, glad that makes sense. And then Declan, I see your question here. You mentioned Yoast and all-in-one SEO. Are there any other WordPress plugins that you recommend we check out?
I don't have any off the top of my head.
I just shared a few on our Slack channel last week. So
Yeah, it was there's an Ahrefs video recently on YouTube, and it's Samo, and he lists 10 plugins. So if you can look up that, Shap's looking up right now. It's 5. But there's a video on YouTube from Ahrefs, which I recommend Ahrefs YouTube videos in general. They're incredible from beginner to advanced SEO. But the most recent one was 5 or 10 plugins for WordPress that he suggests, and I highly recommend that.
So it's not so these I think these actually, it says plugins that are not Yoast is kind of how he does it. But he has have you used Rank Math? You're like the WordPress queen, so have you used Rank Math?
Not recently. It's funny, I focus on Yoast mostly because since WordPress 5 came out, I have been a little concerned about having plugins that are not really focused on understanding the changes WordPress made. So for those of you who are WordPress users, WordPress basically made the biggest change to its system that it's made the entire time that I've been working on the platform in the end of 2018, like December 5th or 6th of 2018. And so when that happened, when WordPress 5 became an update, and now we're into many versions of 5 already, lots of different plugins and themes started to have meltdowns and problems because they weren't prepared for the technical change. And so the reason I kind of removed a lot of those other plugins is because Yoast, I've met them, I've talked to them, they were at WordCamp US 2 years that I went, and I knew that they spent 3 years preparing. for 5.0. And so I actually took all of my clients away from everything else that I couldn't prove was prepared for the new system. So a lot of those I haven't used since WordPress 5 came out.
Sure.
And a couple of the other ones really have to do with site speed, like really looking at how to optimize site speed and do like lazy loads and things like that. So that definitely helps with SEO.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, but definitely to your point, actually no, our Slack is not open to everybody. It's an internal Slack. But what I can do is make sure that I include the list that Leah's talking about. I can share that in the email when we send you the recording. And also the YouTube channel that David mentioned, I actually put into our list of resources. So it's the Hrefs YouTube channel, and they have a video, like you said, about this, where they make recommendations as well. But I would say when you're looking at plugins, Declan, just make sure that it says like the last time it was updated was like 3 months ago or less. So again, I'm being really cautious about any plugin that's not literally being updated on a regular basis, simply because since December of 2018, we've had so many major changes and fixes to the WordPress 5 system that you really want to make sure your plugin provider, and this is actually true no matter what plugin you're using, but that they are like on top of it and really paying attention, because it's very, very easy for those plugins to start causing weird, unexplainable problems in your system, to where things just stop working, or they look weird, or all of a sudden you have a form that's not collecting info, even though it looks like it's working on the front end. And so I would just make sure it's something from like the last 1 to 3 months they've had an update, and you can usually see that directly in the plugin page when you look at it. So hopefully, I want to see if there's one more question in here. Oh, and I see we already got that one, so thanks for plugging it into the chat. But if anybody's got questions, please keep them coming. We're glad to answer them, but we'll keep moving through some of the other ones that I wanted to talk about today. So let's talk about, how do you think SEO is changing as we head into 2020? And you sort of hinted at this, about what we all know, the big changes. And what are some of the new strategies that you think businesses need to sort of evolve forward on, or really start learning about, like reading some things and watching some videos? Like, what are your top things right now?
I think if you operate in a space that is Google calls them your money or your life pages, so there are pages on finance, health and wellness, anything that has to do with people's wellness or happiness, you're going to be really scrutinized by Google. All sites are scrutinized by Google, but that's something that there was an algorithm change that rolled out last summer, and it really hit a few sites very hard, but those sites are really trying to build up their authority on particular topics. So I would say if you fall in one of those categories of your money or your life pages, to really pay attention to your expertise, your authority, and your trustworthiness. So having doctors writing blog posts, if you're a finance group, making sure that you're quoting like Harvard Business Journal and other really reputable sites, making sure the links that you're putting out are reputable links and that show that you're an expert and that you are aware of other experts. So that's something that'll only get more important, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think that has to do with the whole problem we're having in the United States around just, again, hashtag make the internet a better place. We've got a lot of garbage content going around that's not accurate, not truthful, not factual. So we see not only social media sites trying to figure out how to combat that, but Google, of course, has really taken a lead in saying we're going to start scrutinizing things. So you can't just make random claims about stuff and say they're true. You actually have to back it up in some way.
Totally. And then so for me, I think there are continuing trends. They've already been happening, but video SEO and voice search. So I just got a Google Home, which is one of those kind of like Alexa devices. And so a lot of people are very much searching with their voice. Hey Google, how much does a coconut weigh? These kind of voice searches, that's becoming increasingly common. And with that, there's talks of using podcasts as ways to answer voice search. So if you had a podcast on coconuts and then you had that in your podcast, that would be then served to that verbal question. Same with video. So the more you produce video, that's going to be, as you see in Google results, there's a lot of video happening. And with my suggestion there, it's YouTube. As much as I love Vimeo, YouTube is definitely going to be served more in those search results.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious because since I know that Google and Facebook especially are spending so much time studying artificial intelligence, one of the things I think I've been really curious to sort of watch and pay attention to is how far away are we from the Google algorithm being able to listen? Because I don't think we're that far. At this point, the Google algorithm already knows what photographs are. Like the AI can look at a photograph now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I use Google Photos, which is a system where my photos on my phone are backed up into my Google Cloud through Google Photos. When I go to Google Photos, I can literally type in something like woman on couch with dog, and it will pull me all the pictures of people on couches, preferably women with a dog. And because they're like working on that technology, do you guys think that's something that's possible? Do you think it's going to happen? I personally, they won't say it, but I feel like it's going to happen.
If it's not already happening right now.
The whole listening thing, that's a whole other conversation that I would love to have.
Yeah,
about
exactly.
all that.
It's funny, I think because of all the sort of crises around data protection and whether or not we have rights to our data, that's where a lot of the companies don't want to say yes, we're listening to you and we're doing things because there's so much controversy. But I definitely think they're testing that stuff for sure because especially the way Google has bought so much AI companies over the years. That's a huge purchase they've made for probably 10 years.
And if you think about all these devices like that Google Home, they're assembling all this data as we speak. And that's why I like on the Google Home, there's a on-off switch for the microphone. I appreciate that. I don't use Siri. Siri's off on my phone. I don't like the idea of my devices listening to me in general, but there's some convenient stuff too to be like, hey, start a timer for 12 minutes for my pizza, like that kind of thing. That's really nice, but it's also scary. Yeah,
no, it's really interesting because I think that's the battle all Americans have, is that we are like, oh, it's Big Brother. But then we're like, oh, but it makes everything easier.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things that Big Brother's doing that we don't feel 100% comfortable with, and then millions of us are still using it just because it's saving us time and it's allowing us to navigate a world that's so overrun with information. And Stephanie, I see your comment. Thanks so much. We're really glad that you're appreciating the conversation. And again, you can listen to the rest of it later on when you get the recording if you need to. So again, we've got a few minutes left. I'm going to keep going through our questions, but if there's anything else that you want to talk about, please feel free to go ahead and chat it in. I think one of my biggest things for 2020 when it comes to SEO is really just understanding that usability is a huge central focus of everything now. It's funny that I feel like when I started in this industry, the usability of your website and whether or not it was easy for people, how fast it loaded, whether or not people had a good time on your website, nobody cared about that. We were so busy focusing on manipulating the algorithm that we sort of put all that aside, and I think what we've seen is like a full circle return to human beings being what optimization is about. And as much as I feel like, honestly, I could sell SEO work faster and easier and get it done in a much more streamlined way 15 years ago, if I really think about it from me being a person that uses Google's technology and wants to look at websites and things like that, the truth is that return to making the human-centered piece is really better for all of us at the end of the day. So I often think about that fact. I'm like, well, my job is harder. It's harder to explain. The results are not as predictable. It's not as easy or as cost effective anymore. I have to charge people more money because it's taking me so many more hours to do the work. But the flip side of that is when I'm using different tools, I like them better. I get better results. So I think it's an interesting thing that in optimization, we now have to think about it of like just optimizing the experience, not optimizing the keywords and optimizing the links, optimizing the website, but optimizing the entire experience that people are having when they interface with your website, which I think is awesome.
Absolutely.
So how are you guys quantifying success? I think we've kind of touched on this with a few different questions, but again, it used to be, well, I'm number one, so I succeeded. I feel like that's just been a long time gone since we could that easily claim. artwork was doing well. So what is it that you're reporting to people about to really help them understand that either the content work or the link building or whatever it is that you're putting together for them is actually having an effect?
So first off, make sure you have Google Analytics and Google Search Console tracking on your site. It's just free, really useful data so you can make informed decisions. And then within that data, like looking at like your Search Console will show you keywords that you are ranking for, and they will show you kind of your click-through rate, like the people who click on your site after seeing your site, so you can see how many impressions you make and how many actual clicks. And also using Google Analytics goals, which David has a lot of experience in, of setting up those goals and making sure people are doing what they came to your site to do. And you can type in like quantify each goal so you can see how much money or what the worth is of those goals. And then the other thing is, keeping track of what keywords you're ranking for, but it's less about the amount of keywords and more about which ones are important to what you offer and what you want to be showing up for. So I would say those are the big things for me.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. For me, Google Analytics is a great place to start. Going to the acquisition section, looking at the channels, and then it'll break down organic, social, direct, referrals. And so you can get a sense of, is my organic traffic growing? And digging into that, are the keywords relevant? Because you could be number one for something that's completely irrelevant, and that's okay, but it's not doing anything for your business. Just are you growing your organic traffic, and looking at that acquisitions channel and analytics is really helpful for that.
Yeah, I think that's really good stuff. I definitely feel like Google Search Console, if you didn't know, they just actually created a new version over the actually it took them like 3 years to get it done. It was in beta for like a really long time, but I think the Google Search Console has gotten a lot stronger. And one of the little pieces of advice I want to share with everybody is, I think one of the things that I've talked to a number of my SEO sort of colleagues about is, a lot of times we think of SEO when we start with new content. We spend a lot of time generating brand new content that's never been seen before. And David made the point earlier of how that content, when it's brand new out of the gate, it's going to take a long time for that content to gain some really powerful placement in Google because it's new. And Google doesn't know if it's valuable yet. Time has not proven if it is. And so sometimes the first step of SEO is to really look at your analytics, look at your Search Console, and figure out what is already working for you that you could enhance and you could actually do better, because the results on something that's already gaining traction, you will get a faster result off that. So to give you a tangible example, I just had an SEO client where essentially we looked at the fact that they were already getting a majority of their traffic from organic search. Their site does really well. They don't have a lot of competition in their region, so they've been showing up really well. But I figured out, just by looking at analytics in the Search Console, that out of the top 25 pages that were ranking in Google on their website, essentially there were 8 of them that were loading at like somewhere between 6 and 10 seconds. So the pages were so strong, and the traffic was there, and Google was showing them up. But I was like, you know what? I went back to their developer and I'm like, if we could make these 6 or 8 pages like really get up to 3 seconds, which is what Google would like, we might see that they immediately bump higher in the rankings across the board. And literally in 1 month, we bumped their traffic by about, I think it was 17%.
Wow.
Nice.
So I was really excited that what I did first with them when we started was not just start telling them all this new content we should make, but go figure out what they were doing well and figure out how can we make it better. And something as simple as the page speed, it took them from being at, let's say, on an average of like number 8 or number 7 or number maybe 10 or 11 to now being more like number 3, number 4, number 2.
Yeah, that's great.
And so that's just one thing I want everybody to think about too, is starting from scratch with things is great, but I think every SEO project really should start analytically by looking at what you've already accomplished. Because if your website has been around for any amount of time, potentially there's something there to work with, right? Yes. Potentially you've gained some sort of traction that you can work with. So I know we're coming up right at 1 o'clock. I want anyone who's got final questions to go ahead and pop them into the chat, and I'm glad to stay and answer them briefly. But just so you know, we've also included some of our favorite SEO tools, and you can see I've put them basically on each different slide based on who recommended them. So Leah suggested a few things. If you're using Chrome especially, there's actually some great Chrome extensions across the board. So I know a lot of us in SEO, we use Chrome and Firefox both, and they have a ton of SEO extensions that you can use. There's some great tutorials Leah's recommended. And then if you're doing local search, which means you basically have a brick and mortar location that you want to optimize, I would definitely suggest not only using the tool that Leah mentions, Bright Local, but actually just using their website. I'm a huge fan of Bright Local. I've been using it this year in more depth. And even when I only use it for a couple months with a client, because we don't have like a permanent budget to pay for it, it allows us to do so many cool things around making sure everything is consistent and accurate. You'll see too, David recommended that you get in and watch the Hrefs YouTube channel. And I think that is a great YouTube channel. I'm also a big fan of their blog, which I've included as well. And so these are kind of my favorite things here. If you did nothing else, I'll tell you, I still watch Whiteboard Fridays pretty much all the time about different topics, and I find it super useful to do that.
And Rand Fishkin just released a 1-hour, basically beginner's SEO talk, and it's in 6 segments.
Yeah, is it part of Whiteboard?
It's basically Whiteboard, but I think he just kind of did it on his own.
Cool. All right, I'll try to find that link and share that around, because Rand Fishkin, who started Moz.com, is a really, really great SEO expert that you can follow, and he did a lot of the Whiteboard Fridays for years and years. So David, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I see this one last question. Will this video be including the slides that we're sending or showing as well? And yes, absolutely. You will be able to click on all these links that we're sharing. That's why I've put them together. And for those of you using WordPress, I'll make sure that I add a link to that email to the recommended plugins that we talked about as well. But thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate everyone taking time out today to meet with us. In these slides, of course, you've got some information about our free resources here at the JB Media Institute, as well as our latest class online called the Content Strategy Roadmap. So if you're interested in doing more SEO, learning more about it, please check it out. But have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I hope to see you again in a future digital drop-in. And thanks to Leah and David for being here as well. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.